Yep. Here we go. Guys. Welcome back to the Sebastian Scales Show. Every time I start this podcast, by the way, that's called Breezin' by George Benson. Absolute banger. Bit of a positivity banger will make you feel good instantaneously. I was just thinking to myself, like, it's so funny, like when I'm about to start this podcast, I always catch myself just almost like I have to like ground myself beforehand just because of the excitement that I feel to like share, and then like the nervousness that like accompanies that excitement because I want to make sure I don't miss anything, and then it's just like it just dissolves in the knowing that it's all good and you can't make a mistake. Everything that you perceive as a mistake is just an essential part of your soul experience that you just haven't totally discovered why it was yet. And in that space, it's like everything becomes so much lighter because you just know that you don't have to know why it's perfect in order to know that it is, fundamentally. Something like that. Anyway, I'm excited. And how are you? What's going on? It's December, and I just got back from a 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat, and it was basically everything's different now. I mean, everything's always different in every moment. On a molecular level, everything is different every instant. But it just feels like, wow, the shifts that happened in that 10-day period and what's been happening since, it just feels like, man, there's this an experiential understanding of, it just feels like an innate, what does it feel like? See, right there, I know that there's a phrase that I want to say later that uses the word experiential, and I thought, okay, well, I can cut that out because I just said it now and I don't want it to take away or sound repetitive. Like, all of this is happening in just an instant in my brain. It's like I'm trying to have a conversation and my brain's just like spazzing out about what's going to happen 50 minutes from now or however long it takes to get there. Anyway, I want to tell the story about the retreat because it's amazing, and so it was so fun and transformative, and it just, yeah, there's so much to say, and you're not supposed to write at all during it, and I recommend not writing, but I also recommend bringing something to write with, because I know for me, like, this is the fourth 10-day retreat that I've done, and it's called Vipassana. Check it out, Dhamma, DHAMMA.org, if you want to do it. It's free, by the way. The food and lodging and everything is paid for from donations from people that have done it. So if that's not like the ultimate confirmation that something works. I remember having this moment on like day 8, just in the absolute thick of it, where I was just like, I might give everything that I have away to this. Like, everyone on earth needs to have this experience. And it's such a dissolver of what you conventionally think of as being important, like all the way down to the level of like, yourself as a individual entity. It just, okay, let me just get into it, because I was just, anyway, it's It's amazing. And this is the first one that I had done. I did it with both of my parents also, and my friend Emily. And it was so basically the structure is you wake up every day at 4:30 in the morning, and you meditate for 2 hours, and then you have breakfast, which is basically like cereal and like porridge every day. And then you meditate again for like 2 or 3 hours, and then you have lunch, which is just delicious vegetarian food. And then you meditate again for like 3 more hours, and then there's like an evening discourse where the guy who teaches it, Goenka, comes on and gives like he tells stories and gives anecdotes and basically talks about the experiences that you may be having, and then you meditate again after that. So it ends up being like about 10 hours of meditation a day. And yeah, you're not speaking to anyone, you're not making eye contact with anyone. So even though I was there with my parents, we didn't interact. But it was amazing because my dad has done like 25 of these sits, and my mom hadn't done one since I was born. So I'll get into that later. But you're not supposed to write, and the reason I did write is because in past retreats, I haven't written things down, and I've just caught myself like, I would just be like needing to remember certain things, and so I would be like constantly replaying them instead of like focusing and meditating. I'd be like trying to remember this stuff, so it can be a helpful way to just like free yourself from the ideas that you don't want to forget. But anyway, like it was so interesting, and it's so fun going with family, because even though we weren't talking, there was this feeling of, just, I don't know, love and comfort, and yeah, like it was, my dad was they place you in the, like, there's a big hall called the Dhamma hall where everyone meditates together for 3 hours a day. And then there's a pagoda, which has like these individual meditation cells. So everyone gets their own, like, basically like silent cell that they can meditate in, which was essential. And I'll get into that. And then you have your rooms. And when you're newer to it, they generally, you room with other people. And then as you become an older student, you get your own room. And so I had my own room alone, and it was really nice. But it's great being with other people too. But anyway, in the Dhamma hall, they have you sit in order of like how many of these retreats that you've done. So my dad had done the most. So he was in like the very front square. They call it A1. And I was in B2. So I was directly back and over one from my dad. So it was like we were basically sitting together the whole time. And then my mom was on the other side somewhere, and Emily was there too. And so what was really trippy about it is like I remember as soon as I got there, like as soon as I started meditating, it was like this, you're basically becoming hyper aware of the recurring thoughts that are going on in your mind, things that are very present during your everyday reality, but you're not very aware of because you're not present with them generally often. It's hard to be really present of your thinking if you're like doom scrolling. So because you're also not on your phone at all, there is this additional level of like detoxing going on, where in addition to being silent the whole time, you're also not consuming any information in a way that like brings these subconscious and, conscious thought patterns right to the forefront of your mind. You're not, there's no escaping them really. And I was just amazed on day one, basically the first 3 days. It basically took me like 3 days to have my mind kind of settle down just from the sheer influx of stimulation that it gets on a day-to-day basis. And in that 3-day time period, it was like I was seeing constant danger scanning, like just even on the level of like, what are the other people at the retreat thinking about me, who I haven't even spoken to and won't speak to until maybe the last day. But like, it made me really aware of like, oh, my brain just kind of latches on to whoever is in my reality in a particular moment and comes up with things that they could be judging me about or thinking I'm weird or whatever. And it's like, if you're doing that for people that are meditating 10 hours a day, like some of the most blissed out, people, it's just so funny to think that like, they're here taking time, out of their standard lives to like meditate all the time. And my brain thinks that they're thinking that it's weird that I'm wearing the same shirt or jacket or hat. This is the hat that I was wearing all the time in Vipassana. And it was just like that kind of stuff. And I noticed like when you clean your plates when you're finished eating. And I noticed this so much in the initial days, where there would be like a line that would form when people were waiting, because there were only 2 sinks. So people would be waiting to clear their plates. And my brain would just be like sort of spazzing with this imaginary hurry that would be created to, basically like I was thinking that the person behind me was like upset with me for taking too long to clean the plates that then they will use in the future. Like, it's a similar feeling to like being in TSA. When you're going through security and like you feel like the person behind you is going to like stab you if you like take a second to like take your fucking hat off. It had like that kind of feeling. But the difference between, like having those types of experiences normally and like having them on a Vipassana retreat is that because you're not doing anything other than being aware generally, it feels like it, I went into this retreat with the intention of like releasing all lingering fear, like all lingering worries about anything. Like at this point in my life, like I'm ready to just let go of fear completely and trust that I'll be able to respond in a moment where danger actually presents itself. And be able, and just trusting myself to be able to handle whatever comes up instead of needing to predict what's going to come up all the time and therefore be scanning all the time. And so when I caught myself having these worries about not washing the dishes fast enough, it was like, oh, great. Like, let's observe this. Let's see how this feels in my body. And a lot of it was this tension in my stomach and chest. And even just that act of shifting your perception of the worries that are coming up, even just that, like changes the entire experience. And it became an opportunity instead of a frustration. And why am I still operating this way? Which made a huge difference immediately. So those first couple of days were really like, it felt like just a relaxing of the mind. And basically the technique is the first 3 days you're doing what's called Anapana meditation, which is basically you're focusing your entire attention on the area between your upper lip and your nose. And you're trying to develop an awareness of any sensations that you feel in that area, for the purpose of Vipassana, which then happens on day 4. But literally for 3 days straight, you're focusing on that, 2-inch area and just feeling whatever you feel there. And intentionally not focusing on any other feelings, any other sensations that are coming up. And the reason for that is because on day 4, when you start doing Vipassana, you are at this level. You just spent 30 hours meditating on this little area, and you are it's like sharpening the blade of your awareness to a point where you're so sensitive that you can put that flashlight of awareness on any part of your body and feel these subtle sensations that are there. And part of the teaching is basically these sensations are always going on. The teacher Goenka, it's a really cool merge of philosophy and science. I mean, he basically talks about how we are all giant, masses of molecules. He calls us giant groups of, I forget what it is, but basically we're bubbles. This mass of bubbles. And this is atomically, that is what we are. Atoms on that level, on the smallest level observable, we are balls. We're just little tiny balls that are just somehow, just this, we're a particular hodgepodge of atoms. And we're always vibrating. And so this sensitivity that you develop is making you aware of how it feels on your body in a way that is normally not accessed in regular reality, because you have so much shit going on, so much consuming your attention. And so as you continue to focus on this area, you start to feel different sensations, like prickling sensations, sometimes heat or pain, or he goes through the whole list of sensations, and it could be anything. But basically what you're trying to do is observe these sensations without any craving or aversion to them. And the idea is that, well, it's not the idea, this is what's happening. Every time you have a craving or an aversion to reality, you are resisting reality. And you're creating what Goenka calls a sankhara, which is basically a craving or an aversion that's stored in your body. It's similar in my head to a suppressed emotion that, of course, we've talked a lot about on this podcast. And every time you crave or avert to something, you create a new sankhara. And most of us have been creating these sankharas for our entire lives, almost every moment of life. And Vipassana is basically the teaching of awareness and equanimity. So non-reactivity to whatever it is that you're feeling in this area, and then extrapolating it out to whatever it is that's happening in your reality. So as you become aware of these sensations and you don't react to them, the moment you stop reacting, you stop creating new sankharas for yourself. And Goenka says that sankharas are it's suffering, misery. It's wanting reality to be something other than what it is. And so the moment you stop craving and stop averting to reality, you come out of this habit pattern of reactivity of the mind. And it's not like if you just stop reacting, then all of a sudden you're in bliss forever, because you have, the analogy that he uses is it's like there's a fire that's been burning inside of you since you were a child, that the wood that's used in the fire is sankharas. So strong cravings have really deep rooted sankharas in your body. And the moment you stop craving and averting, you stop putting wood on the fire. But the fire's still burning, and it's got decades of momentum behind it. So, but all you have to do is stop reacting, and then all of these old sankharas start coming to the surface. and the wood starts burning up. And as they come to the surface, they manifest in the form of different sensations. And it's the whole spectrum, from like super positive, super like amazing feeling sensations to like really negative, quote unquote negative, like pain, like severe pain. And the goal is to just continue to remain equanimous with everything that comes up. So when you get to day 4 and you start doing Vipassana, basically you take your awareness that you had in this area above your upper lip, and you put it on the top of your head, and then you start scanning every part of your body. And you keep your attention there. And it's amazing when you first shift that attention up and you start feeling the feelings that you were feeling just above your upper lip, like all over your body. It's so intense. And there were a lot of what's called blind areas that I was experiencing, particularly in like my torso, which are blind in part because of sankharas, because of numbness, because of anything. I mean, whenever you create a sankhara, it can be stored anywhere in your body. And so I happen to have lots of them stored in those areas. But like on my face and on my arms and my legs, like all my limbs were like, it was like I could feel like everything. Like it was just this vibrational, like just vibrating bliss. And part of the teaching is like you want to get to the point where you can feel sensations on every part of your body. And what begins as you scanning part by part, your nose and your eyes and your ears and everything, and you stay in a space for like a couple of minutes until you start feeling sensations. At a certain point, you can get what's called free flow, which is subtle sensations throughout your body. And basically what's happening is you're becoming aware of yourself on a molecular level. You're becoming aware of how it feels to be this giant mass of atoms. And on the way to that free flow experience, you come across all these blind areas or different things that you just have to sit with. And it's literally just a game of patience and equanimity and not craving sensations on any part of the body or averting to certain sensations on other parts of the body. So that's basically the breakdown of the technique. So for me, it was like, once my brain sort of started settling down and, I was able to sink more deeply into the moment, I started being able to, my sensitivity increased, and I started feeling these sensations on certain blind areas and all these things. And there's some crazy shit that happened. It feels like you build momentum over the course of the retreat, like just like it took a long time for my mind to settle down. As as you continue meditating, your sensitivity is increasing, sometimes what feels like on an exponential rate. And it trickles out into areas, outside of meditation, where you're just walking around and you can feel yourself vibrating. And I remember I have like a bunch of takeaways that I want to share from different days, but I'm just going to start with some of the wildest shit that happened. Okay, so I went into this experience I had noticed this real extreme tension in my stomach. I can't remember if I've talked about it on the pod or not, but like 6 months ago, I was home in Seattle and I was meditating, and I noticed all of a sudden that I had been like tensing my stomach, just without even having no awareness of it at all until I became aware of it. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm like flexing my abs right now almost. And I started becoming aware of that, and I started like sort of relaxing and releasing the tension. and just sort of allowing myself to have like almost like a food baby. And like, allowing my stomach to puff out. And as I did, it became like really painful. And I felt like just almost like I was going to pass out. And I kept sort of sitting with it. And I had done Vipassana in the past, so I know, just non-reactivity, all that stuff. But it was really painful. And then it got to a point where it dissolved, which is just the process of Vipassana. But I started noticing, like after that for a while, I would be like habitually tightening my chest without any awareness of it. And especially in moments where I felt worried or whatever. So I had been noticing a lot of that going into this retreat, and that was one of my intentions, was to release whatever that tension was. So this is probably on day 8. I guess I can check my notes here. But on day 8, I had gone into the meditation cell, where you meditate alone. And I don't know how long into meditation, but I started noticing this feeling in between my neck and my shoulder, where basically it was like this strong pain and tension sort of started popping up, and I knew, to just let this go, release it, don't attach to it, don't crave, don't avert. But something popped into my mind. Emily is a medical Qigong practitioner, my friend who was on the retreat. And she had put me in touch with this healing lady who had helped train her in the past. And this is like probably a year and a half ago. And this lady and I had a couple of sessions. And during one of the sessions, she was doing some Qigong work on me, which is basically like energy movement and healing. And while she was working on me, it was over Zoom. And I realized, like, my eyes were closed, and then I realized I'm like turning away from the left side of my body. And I started sort of feeling this tension here. And I told her in the moment, and she was like, yeah, you're turning away from there because that's the point where the trauma entered your body. And I was like, whoa. Like energetically, she was saying that's the point where the traumatic energy entered. And that's why I was turning away from it. And it resonated really heavily when she said that. And for some reason, I don't think I'd even really thought about that at all between when she told me that and then in this moment in the meditation cell. It came back to me. And I started realizing, like, oh, that's how this feels. Like, it really started resonating with me on a feeling level, that's what's going on here. And I just had this sort of idea where it's like, okay, if the trauma entered my body here, I wonder if that tension in my stomach is connected to that entrance point. And when I was doing EMDR, like 2 years ago, and we started doing like the deep healing work, it felt like there was this uncoiling of what felt like a snake in my stomach, this like snake of tension. And it started like slithering through my stomach. It was fucking crazy, but it was completely real. And all of this stuff sort of started flooding back into my mind when this clicked in me about the entry point of the trauma. And so I basically just started like sort of like imagining that entry point opening. And I started thinking and sort of intending for this pathway between my stomach and the trauma entry point to open. And as I did, it became like really painful. It was like there was a direct response energetically from this intention. And there was this moment where it felt like the tension in my stomach was like ready to move, but it wasn't moving. And so, as we've talked about on this pod before, and this is basically what Qigong is. It's like when I put my attention in my hands, I can feel the energy in between, this quote unquote nothingness, right? This space that is also like the main thing that we are on a molecular level. Like our atoms are almost entirely space, nothingness, quote unquote. So what is that? What are we then? If we're in almost entirely nothingness, maybe there's more to nothingness than we can see. So anyway, it's like becoming aware of the energy that exists. You're just tapping into what's already there, even if you can't see it with your eyes. And for some reason, this all came very intuitively to me, but I just had this inclination to start trying to move the energy from my stomach out the entry point. And so I like started putting my attention in my hands, and I like flipped them up so my palms were facing up. And they were just like instantly like charged, like deeply energized. And so I started with my hands like over my stomach, and I started like moving the energy up very slowly, like up this like energetic channel that had been created. And I just want to make sure I find this spot because I obviously wrote all of this down. So, oh man, there's so much that happened. Holy cow. Oh jeez. You know what? You can cut it out because it's all good. Or maybe not. Maybe just don't even cut it out. Oh, see, there it is. The moment I find it. The moment I find it, right as I say, don't cut it out. So basically, it was like, did I find it? No. Starting to overthink. But that's the thing, is that this is just what happened to me. And, even if it's like my brain starting to go, oh, are people going to think that this is weird or crazy or whatever? It's like, that is just the price you have to pay. And it's not even a price, but it's just what has to happen in order to be able to get to the point where you're surrounded by people that love you for who you are. The price to pay is judgment from people that aren't supposed to be in your life anyway. If they don't resonate with who you are fundamentally, then that's not somebody that you want to have in your reality anyway. So it's a good thing. It's not a price to pay. People that don't want to be your friend anymore because of you sharing who you really are doing you a favor. It's not a price to pay. You're being paid in energy that's given back to you that you can allocate to people that resonate with your soul. So, yeah, no worries. So anyway, I'm moving this energy up, and as soon as I started moving it, I started crying. And it was like, like deep tears. And it was so good because, in the Dhamma hall, you're there with like 100 people. It's not super conducive to crying, though you could and it would be fine. And I did later on, but I'll get there. So I'm on my own, and I felt like I could just let the tears like pour out of me. And as I, continue, and it also felt like, oh, okay, this is we're on the right track here. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not like applying anything in particular. I'm just like, this feels right to do. So as I'm crying and moving this tension out of my stomach, I started thinking to myself, like, I love you and it's time to leave. I love you and it's time to leave now. And it just got more intense. The more I thought that to myself and the more I did this process, the more the tears flowed. And And then it got to the point where I was just like, leave now. And it was like more movement. And then it got to this point where I had like, my hands felt like they were like magnetized, like they were like drawing this energy out. And I had one hand like up in the air above the trauma wound, and one hand moving the energy up. And it was like drawing it out. It was so intense, dude. It was so wild. And I just remember sort of feeling like this with this, I like saying I love you and thank you and leave. It was like I really did. I was feeling this gratitude for this energy that, you know, is allowing me to transform. Like, you know, this is how I feel about the molestation and like, you know, just trauma in general, is that like, without that, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I'm grateful for everything that got me here. Even the things that would be very conventionally considered like the worst things that have happened to you. It's like even that is a stepping stone on the path of your soul. And you can be grateful for the entire path and the people on the path. And you can maintain that gratitude going into future stones. And, you know, similar to the worries about people not cleaning my dishes fast enough. It's like you can bring that awareness now, you know, to the things that are happening that would have in the past, you know, caused you to spiral or whatever. Like, you know, you can basically take every step on your soul path in gratitude, and it transforms the atoms of the path and yourself as you do that. So anyway, I forgot to say this too. While as I'm doing this, my head is at like a 90-degree angle. Like I'm literally like this. Like my head is like this, and I have one arm up, and I'm pulling the energy up, and I'm just like, it feels so natural, this process. It was almost like playing soccer, where like I have this innate ability to do things that I haven't trained to do. It just feels like it's in my genetic molecular programming, or I've done it before in a past life or whatever. So there's just like so many tears, all this stuff is going on. And they have these gongs throughout the center that they ring to let you know, hey, it's time to meditate, it's time to go eat lunch, yada yada. And so they have somebody that walks through the pagoda by all of the cells with a gong. And this person must have been right outside of my door, because whoever it was, rang the gong, and it was like the vibrations from the gong felt like they were like shaking loose all of like the remaining, almost like if this energetic snake had left this like residual like sort of like snake skin shedding or whatever on the way out. And it felt like the gong was like vibrating and like loosening all this stuff, and then sucking it out with my hand. It's just so ridiculous, dude. It was so incredible. And I got to this point where it felt like it had left. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, all that remains is love. Like, that's it. Because that's every time I let go of fear, that's what's on the other side of it. It's not even on the other side of it, it's underneath it. And it just, man, I cried so hard, dude. And after a while, I felt like, okay, like, let me like patch up this thing on my neck, this wound. And I started like envisioning like love and like white light sort of like filling the space that had this energetic trajectory of the trauma, and just like filling it up totally. and I started like patching over the wound. And the gong was being rung for tea time, which is like 5 to 5:30 every day. And I cried through the entire thing. I didn't even leave my cell. I missed tea time. And it was just, these are tears of like relief and grief and joy and excitement and like just this sort of feeling of knowingness that there's so much more going on here. And now we're just, tiptoeing into, or sticking our toe into like the pool of magic. Or I mean, not even, it's like we are in the pool of magic and we're just like, becoming aware of it. And I remember when I sat up from that session, I was sitting there and I felt ancient. I felt like this thing that I knew how to do perfectly. In the exact moment that I needed to remember how to do it, it came to me. And I just felt like I felt like I've just been here before. On like a level that's beyond conceptual, like it felt like I had an experiential, here's the experiential thing. This is the phrase, an experiential understanding of how it feels to be a soul aware of past iterations. It was like I was tapping into techniques that I had learned in the past that are still there. And I just felt like it was this combination of feeling like lighter than ever and heavy. Like I felt giant. And it was like every cell in my body was just vibrating in love. Yeah, so wild, dude. And while I was on the retreat, I had this thought. I don't know when, but I had done some night cafe. If you remember from past episodes, the night cafe like AI art generator. And dude, I had done this in the past, and I couldn't remember exactly what it was, but this is fucking wild. So this is 2 years ago. I plugged in to Night Cafe. The only thing I plugged in was Sebastian Scales' younger self. And I'll pop the photo up here. So look at this photo, dude. This is what popped up. It's the cosmic filter, and that's the only input. And it pops up this dude who's like smiling. You can see him facing, looking at you. And to me, this looks like a snake. Here, I'm going to screen record this and then I'll add this in. So, got the face here, right there. And then to me, this looks exactly like the head of a snake that's slithering down into my stomach area. And it's so interesting. I remember seeing this and being like, immediately, that's a snake. That's the snake. And then the very next one that I plugged in was Sebastian Scales' higher self, created 2 years ago. And I'm looking, this time, the guy, is facing away, and he's sort of looking off into the cosmos there. This is the head of the snake leaving my body out the exact place where I had been doing this, moving this energy out of. The place where the healing lady told me the trauma entered my body is where you can see this snake leaving. Dude! And these are just back to back. It's not like I was like Sebastian Scales' higher self, snake tension from molestation leaving out of his left shoulder. I just said Sebastian Scales' higher self. And you can see this dark entity. And there's something trippy too, where it looks like, it looks like I'm seated and I'm just like off as I put my attention on the fucking cosmos. This energetic snake leaves in that raising of the vibration. That vibrational elevation, that higher self space allowed me to release this tension, this trauma. And if there's more, that's okay. Bring it on. It was this incredible, and I remember after, it was like, when my parents and Emily and I were driving back, when we got to the restaurant on the way back, I pulled up these photos and I was like, oh my God, because I remembered it in my mind, but I couldn't remember exactly where the snake came out and if that was the right spot and da-da-da-da. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, this is it. So just some classic universal synchronistic confirmation there, dude. I mean, literally, like, that's how it felt. That ancient feeling, tapping into the vibration of my higher self, which we all always are anyway. It was just like, I just had this feeling that, like, everything is different now. And oh man, it was so incredible. It's like, it just feels like trauma is fuel for expansion if you allow it to be. Your trauma is a gift if you allow it to be. It's not to say you should go traumatize people, because it's a gift for you. As the person who was traumatized, you have the ability to transform your perception of that trauma in any way you want. And having spent most of my life perceiving my trauma as something that made me weird and less than and unworthy and unlovable, to be rewiring these beliefs and sinking into the space that allows me to view my trauma as an essential part of the path of my soul. It feels like there's just, it goes from weight to weightlessness. It goes from something that should never have happened to something that had to happen, to something that I would give anything to change, to something now that I would never change. And it's so good. It feels so good, dude. Okay, so, and I should also just say that was not Vipassana. Like, what I was doing there was, I don't know exactly, some sort of Qigong or something, but they say in Vipassana, like, don't do any other techniques. And I recommend that also. Don't do any technique, don't do other techniques, just stick with Vipassana. Because the most intense thing, probably, of the retreat happened in Vipassana. It was just one of those things where intuitively, I knew that I had to do it, and I'm glad that I did it. And I think that there's this trust in my intuition and myself, and this knowing, again, like we were saying, like, like this trusting yourself to respond in the moment, however the moment presents itself. It feels like that is getting stronger than ever. So, jumping back to Vipassana, but before I do, the next day I had this sort of realization about, I had this image come to my head. Basically, this is what I think is going on. So there is this tree of consciousness, and each branch of the tree grows different species, conscious species. There's like a branch for squirrels, and a branch for humans, and a branch for trees. Or maybe it's a forest of consciousness, and there's like the squirrel tree and the human tree, etc. Basically, this tree or these trees grow leaves, and we are all a leaf on this tree. And the moment the umbilical cord is cut, that's the moment that the leaf falls from the tree. And as we're falling, that distance or time, whatever you want to call it, between when you disconnect from the tree and when you land on the ground, that is our current iteration of life. And I was thinking about free will, and basically I think that free will is like, free will is perception. You have the ability to perceive what's happening as you fall however you want to. So, there's leaves that believe themselves to just be a leaf. I'm just an isolated leaf falling to the ground, and I need to grind through this existence, and I hate other leaves. I was thinking about like leaves that are just like pissed at other like racist leaves. I fucking hate dark green leaves. One time the leaf did something I hate them all. The people that you see so regularly in reality who are just like really hating it. I think that, and as we know, like the tension that results from you feeling that way, you create tension in your body as a result of perceiving reality in that way and suppressing emotion. And so I'm not going to cry. Rrr. You create this heaviness that increases the rate at which your leaf falls. So like you have the ability to fall at whatever rate you want. And as you fall, if you're a heavy leaf and you have all this tension, you start falling faster. And this is evidence in like day-to-day life where stress is like a major cause of death and disease and all this stuff. So, and when you get to the ground, when you hit the ground, it's so painful, and it's like a thud. You crash into the ground, and as you're getting to the ground, you're afraid of the ground. I don't want to hit the ground. I'm just a leaf. You start panicking. All this stuff. And conversely, you also have the ability to create no tension for yourself. As a leaf, you have the ability to make yourself completely weightless and float. And as you release this tension and weight and heal, all of these things that allow you to become lighter, you start to float with the wind. And you allow yourself to be guided by the wind of the universe to wherever your leaf needs to go. And instead of feeling like you're this isolated leaf who needs to defend itself against all the other leaves and defend itself against the wind, you become aware of the fact that you are a leaf. And just a moment ago, you were connected to the tree. And you see new leaves being born and falling all the time. And you see these leaves below you being absorbed back into the roots of this tree of consciousness. And you have the ability to recognize your cyclical nature. The cyclical, the soul path is cyclical. It's a cycle. And we see this happening all the time in nature with everything. All the leaves that fall onto the ground are decomposed and absorbed back into the roots, and it's a never-ending cycle of life that we now as we're the first leaves as far as we know. I'm sure there's aliens out there and all these other conscious beings, obviously, but we're the first leaves in our observable universe that are able to become aware that we are leaves and to become aware of our connection with the tree and to know that hitting the ground is nothing separate from the fall. It's all one cycle. And also, when you get to the ground, when you're a weightless leaf, you float like without impact and land on the ground. And it's painless. But if you're not, there's a saying that Goenka talks about where he's like, Vipassana meditators always die with a smile on their face because it's a new experience that they get to observe. And you can land on the ground as a leaf, knowing that you've done this countless times. And you've been many, many different leaves. And even when you are, quote unquote, separated from the tree, you're not separate from the cycle. And another part of this is like, in addition to being able to make yourself fall faster with tension, as you dissolve the tension, you can actually float higher than you were. And this is why I think, like, you see people that start doing healing work. I remember seeing Emily and both of my parents after the retreat, and myself, like, everyone looks so much younger. And I think it's because we're literally starting to float. We're getting higher. It's like reverse aging. In the way that stress can age you rapidly, not stressing also has the ability to have the reverse effect. So it was just this analogy of leaves that really made a lot of sense to me. I'll pop up the picture here that I drew. And yeah, like, how good does it feel to know that you can be perfectly guided by the wind to everywhere that you need to go without forcing anything, without creating any tension for yourself. And it's just funny that we see the cycle constantly of billions, trillions of people and other conscious beings being born all the time, and all these people, quote unquote, dying. Like, where are all these people coming from? And where do they go? We see this pattern all the time, and yet we think of ourselves as something other than that. Even when you're falling, you are the universe. So, anyway, that was a fun analogy that I thought of that I wanted to share. Okay, so when I got to day 9, it really does intensify over the course of the at least for me, over the course of the retreat. It got really intense, and as you progress with Vipassana, you can get to this point where, you're basically having free flow throughout the body. And he talks about how, like, you have to be careful to not create a craving for these incredible feelings that you're having and sensations that are popping up. Because like everything, everything has the characteristic of anicca, Goenka says, which is arising and passing away. And there's no need to attach to anything that's so ephemeral, because every single thing that exists in nature has the same quality of anicca. So there was a moment on day 9 where I was meditating in the morning, and I started feeling this pain in my back. It was like, it started like pretty intense and just got to a level that I was like, oh my God, this is like, it was so extreme. And I'd had enough sort of different types of pain pop up throughout the course where I'd built up some equanimity momentum. But this was on another level. And it felt like as I continued to not react, the capacity for the intensity of the sankharas that were coming up increased. And it almost was like popcorn, where like these pain sensations started popping up like all throughout my body in addition to the pain in my back. And then I started feeling this. It literally felt like I was sitting on top of a fire, like this pain in my butt. Like I was just like, it might have been the worst pain I've ever felt in my life physically. And I just remember thinking, like, through all the pain, I remain. Like, I am here no matter what it is that I'm experiencing, no matter what sensation I have the ability to not react to it and not create more suffering for myself. And as the pain rose, I felt like I had this moment of basically just a complete, well, I don't know if it was totally complete, but what felt like a complete understanding of my ability to sit with whatever life presents itself as. Like, no matter how much pain comes up, I don't have to react to it. And I'm safe in the pain. You know, as a leaf of the universe, I'm safe in the cycle. Even if I die right now, I'm safe. If I expand my perception out of who I am far beyond like Sebastian and the fact that I am from Bainbridge Island and like whatever, and that I'm 29, like if I expand that out to out and in to the molecular level, you know, I'm almost entirely nothingness. And as I was sitting in this pain, there was this moment where I had this pain in my rib, sort of for the last couple of days, and it just started dissolving, and like almost like in this sort of like wave of disillusion, like all of the popcorn, all the pain sensations started dissolving. And it was like this moment where the conceptual understanding of like, oh yeah, anicca, everything is temporary, that really came to pass in a moment that was like, felt unbearable. And if you can sit with that feeling of unbearability, anicca will always end up being the case. And the pain dissolved. And I had this like river of tears just streaming down my face, like silent tears. And this is in the room with everyone. This is in the Dhamma hall. And there's like people right next to me. My dad's right next to me. And I just have like these blissful tears floating out or falling off of my face. And I remember in that moment just feeling like, okay, like this knowing is available forever. And I also remember thinking like, holy shit, like I might go be a monk. Like this is it. Like this is it. It might not be the path, but it is a path out of suffering completely. It felt like if I can sit through that, there's nothing I can't sit through. And of course, the feelings associated with sitting with that pain and allowing it to be what it is fully without any resistance. I mean, it's literally like I was floating while simultaneously being grounded. It was like I was grounded in my soul. And man, dude, it just felt fucking limitless. And I remember like at that point also being like, wow, okay, I might give everything up. I might get rid of every single thing that I have. And of course, you know, like Goenka talks about how, you know, there's sort of two paths. There's monks and householders. And the monks go give everything up and go, you know, do Vipassana all the time and reach enlightenment. I remember sort of feeling an urge for that. But I also simultaneously got even more rooted in my path as a householder, at least for now, because I feel like there's so much happening right now that has me. I need to be with other people, and I want to be. And maybe there will come a time where it feels like, yeah, maybe I'll go full monk mode, and that'll be that. But it was like a glimpse of like a possible path, while knowing I need to be on a different one for now, and it just felt amazing. Yeah, it was so fucking crazy, dude. And the last day you start talking. It's called noble silence, not talking the whole time, and then noble silence ends, and it's sort of like a buffer day, where you start reintegrating with reality. And it's so funny when you start talking again, because you haven't used your vocal cords in so long. And so even just the feeling, and you're so sensitive, so just the feeling of the vibrations moving through your mouth and voice box, all this stuff, it just makes you laugh and giggle. It's so funny. And on that last day, you're interacting with the other meditators, and it is literally like the most blissful group of people. As you can imagine, everyone who's there has been meditating the whole time. The vibes of the place are just like unreal. And we started having these interactions with these guys. So many amazing people that I met. That just it is a magical experience. And on the last day, you learn this technique called metapala, which is basically at the end of each Vipassana session, you spend a couple of minutes just wishing well, like you basically say, like, may all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful, liberated. May all beings share my merits, share my peace, share my harmony. Everyone is my friend. Like this kind of stuff. And it was this incredible feeling, because I felt that deep gratitude for like everyone that's ever been in my life, including the people that have done things to me, including the guy who molested me, including the people that have talked shit about me, including everyone. Nobody is excluded from this, because cutting off love for anyone is cutting off love for yourself. And on the molecular level, like there's like a long way to go, but even just having a glimpse of that molecular atomic awareness, it just makes you feel like we really are all one soul family. Just we're in the sequence of the soul, the cyclical, I said it earlier, cyclical sequence of the soul. And I don't want anybody to be excluded from the love that is available, no matter what you've done, and no matter what you've done to me. It just feels like this total place of just infinite love. And yeah, there's so much more. And I know I don't think my I don't think my camera has enough storage. Let me check. I got 8 minutes. 8 minutes. All right. We can talk more about this another time, of course, anytime. But yeah, man, it was just like, it was just this feeling of like, man, everything is perfect. And I found this leaf. I found this leaf walking around. By the way, the campus, it was in North Fork, California, which is near Yosemite. And it's just like the most beautiful place. I'll pop some photos up. 'Cause it's just incredible. Yeah. And then, interacting with my parents after, I mean, it was like, it was just the lightest I've ever seen them. Like my mom, she had this tick in like with clearing her throat for the last, I don't even know how long, years, where it had gotten really bad to the point where she almost couldn't get through a sentence without having to go, without having to clear her throat. And it was so incredible interacting with her, because not only was she light and all of these amazing things, but this throat tick was completely gone. And it hasn't come back. Like they came back to LA and we were hanging out for a couple of days after, and she was saying that she had intense throat sankharas come up. And, similar to what was going on with my back pain, she said she sat with it and eventually it dissolved. And it's like, dude, come on, like, let's go. Like, you start seeing like the real tangible shifts. And like, I mean, there's just, oh man, I could just go on and on. But I think that's what was going on with the pain in my back as well, was like, I remember during the molestation, before I told my parents about what happened, I was having these like extreme back spasms. And so I think that's what was coming up. So anyway, it was just absolutely magical. And one thing I wanted to say too is, so my parents, when they were trying to get pregnant, they got pregnant, and then my mom had a miscarriage, and then she went on a Vipassana retreat. She got recommended it by somebody in a bookstore. And then she went on that retreat, came back, and my dad was like, whatever you just did, I got to go do that because I've never seen you like this. So they went and did one together, and then they got pregnant with me. And then my mom was doing Vipassana. She was doing Vipassana when she went into labor. And then they had me, and then they got pregnant again, and she had another miscarriage. So it was almost like this Vipassana intervention that like allowed them to dip into a space where they would be able to have a kid. And then we found this out. So Goenka, the teacher, has died. I don't know when he died, but he's not alive anymore. I mean, he's a fucking leaf in the ground. He's probably a squirrel somewhere or whatever. Maybe he's, who knows? But death is just an essential part of life. And life is an essential part of death. Every part of the cycle is essential because it's all one loop. If any part of the loop changed, it would not work. Anyway, when he was alive, he came to Seattle, and my parents did a group sit with him. And we found this out later, but my mom was pregnant with me when she was meditating with Goenka. So I was like in the womb getting these Vipassana vibrations from the teacher. It's so cool. And then the trippy part is my dad took me to 3 children's Vipassana retreats that are like 3 days long. They're much less intense. But he took me to 3 of them at ages 8, 9, and 10. Which was the exact time frame I was being molested for. And of course, my dad didn't know. But while I was having all of these like disassociative, like soul leaving my body experiences in the molestation, I'm watching it from third person, like all this crazy stuff is going on. My dad intuitively, somehow on a higher level, knew to bring me to these Vipassana courses, which, even though they weren't anywhere near as intense as the ones that I've done as an adult, Vipassana is like an anchoring into your soul, an anchoring into now, bringing you back into a moment that I was trying to escape through disassociation. And I have no doubt that that helped me speak up about what was happening. So just some classic retroactive synchronicities, that were going on. And so I'm a Vipassana baby. And yeah, I cannot recommend it highly enough. I'll put the link to it in the description if you'd like to check it out. But dude, I am so grateful. So grateful for you listening, watching. I wanted to say this really quick too, and I'm about to run out of time on the recording, but when I got back, when I went on my phone initially, it was like being on mushrooms, and I literally couldn't look at my phone because everything was like flowing off of the screen, and it felt like it made me want to like vomit. So it took me a while to get back on my phone. And then when I did eventually go back on my phone, I remember it was so interesting when I got back into my apartment. Like the first thing, as soon as I sat down in my chair, I noticed this urge to go on Instagram. And 2 minutes. This urge to go on Instagram, and I didn't do it, but it was like this spatial pattern popped back up. So when I did eventually go on Instagram, it was like right when Spotify Wrapped had come out, and some of you had posted about how this podcast was in your top 5 most listened to podcasts, and I was so stoked. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's listening. That's so amazing. And thank you for sharing it. And I just wanted to say I had this whole sequence where I hadn't responded to like anyone, and and I was like trying to take it really slow, reintegrating and stuff. And so I saw the posts, and I didn't repost them. I was struggling because I was like, I want to share these, but also there's all these people that I think will be mad at me if I don't, because I haven't responded to them, and blah, 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 blah. All this classic shit started flooding back in. And then I just started, again, like, how quickly can you come back to awareness and equanimity? Like not putting any, like, maybe these people who are listening to my podcast won't just hate me forever if I don't repost their thing. Maybe it is like completely fine either way. And maybe the people that, if I do repost it, maybe the people that I think will be upset with me for not responding to them yet just won't be. And let them leave if they do. It's all good. So anyway, I'm just trying to cram a bunch of stuff into the end here before the recording cuts out. But thank you so much for sharing about that. And thank you to everyone who listens to this and watches. It's such, I feel so fucking lucky to have a space where I can talk about these things, and you're down to talk about them too, because I don't know, dude, it feels like we're discovering, the recording cut out. Well, hopefully I can still do audio. That's good. Hopefully it still caught it. Anyway, yeah, just, I love you guys. I hope you have an amazing holiday. I have this feeling like, for the first time, I think, normally when it's like approaching the new year, I always feel like, I got to change a bunch of shit, and like I really got to get my life together, and blah, 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 blah. I almost feel like almost like a regret or something, or like I didn't accomplish enough or whatever it is. But this feels like, going into this new year and whatever, in just like a total understanding of being perfectly on time, on your soul schedule. On the schedule of your soul, you are perfectly on time, and you can never be late. And sinking into that space and letting all of the tension of feeling like you need to be somewhere other than where you are dissolve, and just floating along as the leaf that you are, in total lightness, trusting the wind to carry you everywhere you need to go. So, anyway, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be a leaf with you. How cool it is that we exist at the same time. Sending you lots of love. Happy holidays, whatever it is that you celebrate, wherever you are in the world. God, this place is the fucking best, huh? So sick. All right, I'll see you guys in 2025. Let's go. Can't wait. See you. I mean, I can't wait because I love being here too. But also, there's going to be great. All right. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.